Hello, Toddy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How's a snow day? Have you enjoyed the snow?
Yeah, I actually had to drive my car for maintenance this morning and I walked 3 miles home in the snow. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Was it once you got going, like during the 3 miles, it wasn't that cold, is it? Or like even though it shows negative outside, I feel like once you start moving around, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I find it today warmer than, for example, when I was out, not yesterday, but the day before that, I think it was colder. I went for a walk, maybe 20 minutes, and it was much colder and not so nice because it was like gloomy. And today I found it pretty nice and it was a very nice walk.
The sun is out today.
Yeah, although I was early in the morning, like 7:30, 8 o'clock, so there was not so much sun this morning. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I because of the snow, the school is starting late, so I had to take my kids to the playground. I was like, oh, this is really nice.
Oh yeah, it is. I'm trying to actually kick my kids out of the house so they can see some sun.
Yeah. Enjoy. Okay, let's see, who do we have on the call? Let me share my screen. This around a little bit. Okay, today is the 21st. Okay, can everyone see the screen okay?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
cool. And before we start, I see Noel have added the plugin as OCR artifact to the agenda, and Joshua has refactor nested reference PR. Okay, I see Noel and Joshua in the waiting room. Let me admit them in. Okay, I think everyone is in now. Okay, let's look at our PR list. I think Binbin is still working on the end-to-end test. Jimmy is probably off for the vacation, so he'll be able to rebase when he gets back. Akash, the add HTTP TP retry client, that's ready for review for Shiwei and Binbin, is that correct?
Yeah, just waiting for them to take a look at it, and then it should be good to merge.
Okay, cool. And the Docker config, I've seen you've added a comment, so we're probably just waiting for, I think his name is Chu Hua to respond. I can't see from the GitHub profile, but I think I can see his full name from the internal tool. And same thing, I've added a comment on the config map annotations, just to clarify on his user scenarios. So yeah, we'll just wait for him to respond. And I see Joshua have posted the PR about the nested reference. I think I had one question. Joshua, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. I had a question, like in earlier conversations, maybe like a couple of months ago, I think the idea was to remove the executor settings from the configurations of Ratify. Like we had a conversation with I think Kara at the time. Is that still the plan? Because this PR adds more property to the executor configuration.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure on that. That's the first I've heard of moving configuration out of the executor. If that is the case, I can go back and talk to Kara and see what that's about. But yeah, I don't really have any info on that.
Oh, got it. Akash, do you remember where that conversation landed, like about removing the executor configurations?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it was part of the whole idea of adding the orchestrator, right? Is that, yeah, and I don't know if that's still happening or if it's just not prioritized. Maybe they're linked.
Maybe we can point Joshua to the design doc Kara had, so like just to restart the conversation again about where is the orchestration layer.
Yeah, I think that is a good starting point.
Okay. Yeah, Joshua, your internal, right? I think there's an internal document tracking the proposed changes. We can send that over.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. But yeah, I'm with CSC, so I should be able to see it. So
okay, cool. Let me just I have a pen, so I'm gonna take an action item to send you a link to that.
cool, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So we'll need to have another discussion with the CSC to see if that's the direction we want to take. And also if we do end up adding a property to the executor, Joshua, like, do you think the executor should be a CRD, or like, how do we watch for the changes on the config map?
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to bring up was with this change, like if you're running this in Kubernetes and you add a verifier CRD and you'd like to check nested references for that, currently you would have to redeploy Ratify for those changes to take effect. So that's something I wanted to bring up and just kind of get everyone's thoughts around that, because that's obviously not ideal. I think if we bring in the orchestrator and have a CRD for that, maybe that's the way to go. But yeah, that was kind of one of the open questions around this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's have that discussion with Kara then. And then we can, yeah, if we're going with the orchestrator and orchestrator will become a CRD, then it's we're good, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other open items to discuss, Joshua, on this one?
I think that was mainly it. It's still this, the actual like functionality of the app doesn't really change. What changes is like the user experience for where you set these values. So yeah, I just also wanted to make sure that this is, the direction everyone wanted to go in. Currently it defaults to false. So like, don't look for nested references for a particular artifact type. That was another question I wanted to bring up around, like, is that the way we want to keep it? Or would we rather have, automatically go and get nested references unless you specify not to? So yeah, I think it was just basically those two things, was the redeploying Ratify and then what we want set as defaults. But this is also something that, like, if we decide we don't want to go through right now, it's totally fine, and we can keep this around and maybe implement this at a later time. It is a breaking change, so I know with the release coming up, I don't know if that's something we want to go down right now. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thanks. I think our plan is to cut a release, like a RC release branch early in January. So yeah, we'll probably check with Luis when he comes back, but I think this is a breaking change that requires more discussion. So we'll probably need to talk about it a bit more, like if we want to take it for the release.
Yeah.
And Toddy, Yeah, thanks. And Toddy and Akash and Noel, I'm not really familiar with the nested reference. Like, is it the scenario like if you have a SBOM, for example, the nested artifact would be like the signature of the SBOM. Like, I've seen this as a typical example. So should we always look for the nested reference?
Yeah, I actually don't have opinion at this moment because I haven't thought about this. To confirm, yes, the nested references is exactly this scenario where you have, let's say, image, the image has SBOM and the SBOM has signature. I need to look at more into the details. And are we thinking of having this as part of the RC1 or actually the whatever the next release is? Sorry.
Sounds to me, Joshua, you're not urgent on this change.
Yeah, it's really up to the community of what we want to decide together. So I think, yeah, like you said, more discussion is needed around this. To me, it's, it's whatever we feel like is most important at the moment. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really change functionality. You can still use it the same besides setting config values. So yeah.
I think one thing to call out here is if we make a default, at least for certain scenarios where perf is important, it's going to have an extra call out to registry to get the refers. So I guess maybe that's two different conversations because the perf, where it's important in a perf scenario, might differ from what the default should be. But yeah, there's also impact on that end.
And do we have a default right now for how deep in the nested references will go?
So I believe right now, without this PR, so if you set in, like, let's say in your SBOM verifier, you say that I want to get nested references. Currently, actually, the behavior is more of like a Boolean. Like the docs say that you can specify like, the signature artifact type, and it's supposed to go out and just get that. But currently it actually grabs everything. So the behavior would be anytime I have an SBOM, I set, nested references to basically true. And so it would get any nested reference under an SBOM. So you come across that artifact type, it'll go out and get it as long as you set that in the config. So there's no, I mean, however many levels deep, I'm not sure. It would be basically for an artifact type, go get the next level of things. If you had an SBOM on an SBOM, you would have an endless loop of things. But if you had another verifier that, I don't know what the scenario would be, but like an SBOM with a signature and the signature had something else that you were verifying, it technically could go down that level if you had a verifier that specified, yes, I want to go down this for whatever artifact type. So I don't know if that totally made sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. My question would be, how can we prevent this like endless or very deep traversal of the structure? Whether we can set some limits or not. Maybe that's one thing that we still need to discuss and figure out what the behavior will be.
Yeah, and I guess it would be through your configuration how you do that, because if for an SBOM you said yes, go out and get signatures, it would go and get the signature, basically anything nested underneath it, but it wouldn't traverse anymore if there wasn't another artifact type that you said yes, go and get nested references for that artifact type. So it's not going to continue unless you have an artifact type that you would like to go further down on.
Okay. Yeah, I can take a look, but if you think that those questions are already answered, except the cache also, he had some performance issues, but that is separate, as you mentioned, the cache. I'm more looking at how can I actually eventually do a denial of service if I create a very deep structure and that doesn't stop actually traversing, which is somehow related to the performance. But thanks, Joshua, for the explanation.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just wondering, like, for example, you have an SBOM. Does it make sense to have an SBOM on an SBOM, or is there maybe an application level constraint we can say, like if you're an SBOM and we think only signatures make sense, then we only go a certain level or only allow certain type of artifacts. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, the way I look from actually my point of view is like, how can I exploit this, not whether it makes sense, right? And if we don't have the necessary kind of checks, how can I actually do something malicious to either break a deployment or something like this? So that's kind of my point of view. I think on the other, like the mainstream scenario, yeah, you don't have SBOM on top of a SBOM, like nested SBOM or something. I don't know what is the right terminology. But do we enforce that somehow? Because I can theoretically go and attach SBOM to an SBOM to an SBOM to an SBOM and so on, right? There is no checks in the registries to prevent that. Now on the verifier, we need to make sure that like such structures are accounted for and that doesn't actually breaks the verifier.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm not saying we should go implement these checks immediately, but I think it'll definitely be a good starting point to have a list of things that we might want to check for. Cool. Just checking for chat messages. Okay. Yep. Matt saying he will send a link to Josh. Thank you, Matt. And next item on the agenda, I think it's the other PR that Noel opened as draft. Is Noel, are you on the call right now?
Yeah, I sure am.
Oh, you are? Oh, cool. Yes, now I can see you in the participant. Do you want to talk about the
Yeah, I sure would. So if we open that one up, we can do a deep dive at some of the time. But the basic idea was, I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the idea of letting Ratify pull down plugins as OCI artifacts. And so we've got an issue filed, and we said we're going to have a draft PR so we can start discussion on this. So here we're looking at it. The general idea behind it is, right now it's kind of hard to get plugins out the door for people. They have to rebuild Ratify or kind of like hack some Helm chart output. It's not very friendly. With this change, this is a working PR, so you can pull this down and run it and give it a try. You can upload a built verifier or store as an OCI artifact. So I have it called Noel FDPO sample plugin v1. So make it available. And then the next step being in the CRD config, I had a new property called source. And so this would point to, if you scroll down just a little bit to using a plugin. The idea is that Ratify would know how to connect to this registry, very similar to, actually it's the same way that it does to the ORAS stores today. Pull down that artifact, and then whenever it needs to run in this case, the sample plugin, it would already have it downloaded and can just execute it the same way that it does today. This just solves a little bit of a distribution problem. So this is the PR that shows the logs, how it works. I've annotated the code itself with some comments and some open questions that I had. But I wanted to open this up for discussion, and then I've got some next steps. So I'm pulling code from the ORAS store, and that's kind of a hack. We would want that in a common location if we want to move forward with this. I need to add tests, samples, and docs. And then an open question. Right now we bundle, I think the SBOM, the license checker, and maybe one more, maybe cosign or something as plugins inside the Ratify image. So if we were to make them available where they're a little bit more dynamic and a CRD could register them, you could keep doing what you're doing, but you could also swap the Helm chart over to pull those from either GHCRIO or upstream where we have the Ratify image published. So anyway, I wanted to give a brief overview and you know, kind of see what we want to do with this this idea.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks for this PR. So I know like Sajay would definitely be very excited to see this, but he's not he's on vacation right now.
Sure.
But yeah. Any feedback, Toddy, about this idea of moving all plugins to downloadable artifacts?
I don't have a feedback at this moment.
No, just thinking about this, like the advantage and disadvantage of moving to downloadable artifacts. Like there's more dependency, but then also makes it lean, like is it leaner to install Ratify, and then you don't have to re-download the other plugins if they haven't changed. Just trying
the real benefit. Yeah, the benefit really is, let's say I have a verifier that can verify Cyclone DX format or something that we don't have in the Ratify repo, because I'm an external plugin author, or I want to talk to my own company's database to do a lookup of, you know, some data about my images. So right now it's possible to write those plugins, but to package them up and deploy them to my cluster is pretty painful. So we've got an issue somewhere about that, and I know Jimmy has brought that up as well about this tight coupling. So what this lets you do is basically register your plugins dynamically rather than having them have to be part of the Ratify container image. So right now you have to like rebuild all of Ratify and copy in your extra files, and you know that's extra stuff that most people don't want to deal with. Or on the other side, you can install the Helm chart and then kind of do some advanced Helm, jump through a few hoops with customize to add additional files within a init container, and like it's just not fun. It's really painful. This gives a much nicer experience for Ratify users because they can say, here's the plugin that I want to register, same as we do today, but they add additional one field that says, you know, what's the source of my plugin, and when they specify that, if they've specified that, Ratify could pull that down, download it, and then everything else behaves the same. So it's really solving a plugin distribution problem.
Okay, cool. And we still have the option to like bake the plugin inside the Ratify image, right? We're going to continue supporting that, or we should...
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no changes to that. This is purely an opt-in change. That's why next step is consider removing plugins, and then instead of do that, that doesn't mean we have to. What we're doing today still works. And if we like that plan, and if that's better for versioning or packaging or anything like that, we can continue doing that. This was just a, hey, this opens up the possibility to update the SBOM plugin independently of the Ratify release cadence, so that you could say, you know, my SBOM plugin has been updated to v. whatever, but we're not ready to do a v2 release of Ratify yet. So you can still get your updated plugin without having to wait for all of Ratify to be updated. So it would be a benefit. We can take it or leave it, but that's kind of like a after all the tests and everything have been added in.
Yeah, just one more question. When we release Ratify, let's say we're going to release RC1, and can we just release Ratify itself without updating all the dependency plugin if there was no changes?
We could if we wanted to. We would have to go update the builds to make sure that the plugins were you know, had their own publishing life cycle. But we have the potential to do that if we wanted to. Okay.
So do you think initially they'll have the same life cycle?
I would think so. Just as a simple thing, we'd probably say, you know, if you're on Ratify v1, download the v1 of SBOM plugin as well.
Yeah,
just to keep it simple. And if you wanted to swap that out for as a fork of the SBOM plugin or something like that, you could do that if you wanted, but you know, that would be like advanced mode for people.
Yeah, and can we say only the latest Ratify works with the latest version of the plugin? Like we don't have to solve the compatibility.
Yeah, I didn't touch on any of that really. Everything else, it executes completely as is. So it's still calling the binary, it's still doing the standard in and JSON and environment variables. So like nothing has changed at all. It's just how do you get that binary inside of your container? That's really the scope of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And I think it's the first point you have there, like pulling the auth provider and moving it to a common package makes sense to me. I just wanted to check with Akash, any concerns there about sharing the auth code path?
No, I think that makes sense. Now we've come to the conclusion that different components need the same thing, so I think we should move it to a common folder. I'm in favor of that.
Okay, cool. So Noel, what do you think the next step is? Like, me and Akash can look through the code just to see if we can we spot anything that's unexpected.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I think for me, then the next thing, I really want kind of a thumbs up from, the Ratify team larger that we want to move forward with this before I do the investment of, I'll break out the tasks and send PRs and we'll get all the things done for the next steps. And I can make sure that all gets done. What I'm looking for is, should we proceed, kind of a yes or no?
yeah, I think Sajay will be really excited. Both Sajay and Jimmy, like, I think we're definitely want to move forward with this, but should we wait for them or should we just go ahead? What do you think, Toddy?
From priority point of view, I would really like to hear kind of Sajay and Louis' opinion. So I cannot say right now. Sorry. Yeah.
No problem.
I'm still catching up with the Ratify stuff, and one of the things that I want to make sure is that we don't introduce too much new functionality before the next release.
Yeah.
So I would say at this point of time, maybe actually scheduling it for the release after. That will be a good one, if that's fine with everybody. If we think that it is important, at least let's hear Louis and Sajay when they come back.
Yeah. Agreed. We want to see, like, is it a very big feature, and do we want to take over RC or not? Like, if we did have this for RC, then plugin distribution, it brings a good main advantage of easier plugin distribution. But yeah, we'll check with Louis and Sajay beginning of January. I think that's going to both come back.
Yeah, that sounds good. So what I'll plan to do is I'll plan to do the low-hanging fruit, like the refactor piece will just be a standalone, like, all the Tesla passages, kind of a move from A to B, and then get the start getting the PR in place for some of the features. But whether we merge them before RC1 or after RC1, we can take on as a discussion item once those two folks are available after the holidays. So if that works for everybody, then I'll take on the tax of making sure it's rebased or whatever we need to do over time, but we'll have the code kind of moving in the right direction.
Yeah, sounds good. And Akash and I can both do an early pass on it as well.
Yeah, it's actually pretty small. It's kind of like one file and a little bit of CRD wire up. So it's
Okay.
If you look at the files tab, it's I know it says 16 files. It seems kind of scary, but most of them are just like one-liners of like adding the new property to a few interfaces. The majority of them will be in the download.go file, and you'll see it'll all look pretty familiar. It's kind of like assembling together some of what the ORAS store already does. So create a client, resolve the manifest, download the manifest, read the blobs, download the blob, mark it as executable, and then run it. The running it is later, so it's pretty short.
I see. And will you be doing the refactoring to combine this auth client with the RS?
Yeah, I'll take that up.
Okay, great. Thank
We'll
you.
try to make it as easy as possible for y'all.
Great. Any additional feedback before we move on? Okay, cool. Oh, we still have 30 minutes left. Any other topics anyone want to cover?
I have a quick one, seeing as there's so much time left. So we had a issue open that Bin took care of for us, basically just kind of some work with some of the web and network images. And it kind of got us thinking, you know, we might need changes potentially later, maybe additional artifacts pushed or signed, or, you know, whatever it might be. So we're just curious, with the best path, should we just potentially open an issue out on that particular repo? Would that be maybe the easiest way to do it versus kind of trying to come through anyone on this team, like the web and networks repo that exists?
David had access to the web and network repository.
Okay.
I don't know. Toddy, did David pass that access to you?
I need to check. I do have some access, but not the full one. So what exactly do we need to do there?
Yeah, so our thought was one thing would be, and we could contribute this as well, but some potential documentation on that site just to list all the available images and tags and sort of, and maybe an ORI's Discover on what they contain, just so for usage of those. For example, like we use the signed and unsigned one, and then the all-in-one. And then the latest change that we'd requested was we had asked for some media type updates on some of the artifacts that were pushed, just to kind of line up more with like INA types and things. But we may have some more changes coming down the line, rather than kind of, you know, just maybe directly ask Bin or open a ticket here if there was a better path for us to either put in, you know, a PR or ask for those changes. That would might be easier to put it over on the other repo, or any recommendations would be fine.
And that is which is not the Ratify repo, is it some different?
Yeah, there's like a Wabbit Networks one out there. Let me I can link it real quick. I think I have it open here. Hold on one second.
I can check what kind of access we have there, but
yeah, because I think we have, I found it. I'll drop it in the chat really quick.
I don't think I have access to this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be David and eventually Steve Lasker. They both are actually out. Steve for a while. David actually is going out today. Susan, if you want to ping David, then ask him.
Perfect.
But
okay.
I don't know whether he also has access to that.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Matt, was there previously open issue on updating the images?
Yeah, Jeff had opened one on this repo, and Bin took care of it. So I think it was just, it's probably closed. I haven't looked at it again today, but I know he did take action and did repush some stuff for us. Let's see here.
I think it's still open. I was actually just going to update it, requesting for another addition to the repo. So that's why we were wondering, like, oh, it might be more straightforward if there was like clear documentation on like what exactly was in it in its entirety, or if we could just like have access so we could like do it ourselves, stuff like that.
We can start a conversation on. I need to clarify with David or Steve. Like, first of all, what is the main purpose of the Wabbit? I don't know if we just use the Wabbit network monitor image just out of convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need something long-term for Ratify. Maybe we should start a different repository. I need to figure out what is the initial intention for the repository.
Right. If we do go down that path, I have a repo that we've kind of all been using here internal to push images to our own ACRs that kind of contain all the different permutations, like everything you'd want: signed, unsigned, SBOM, signed SBOM, kind of the whole mix with vulnerability reports and kind of all that. So if that is a path we want to sort of put it somewhere else, I do have a repo that we could just transfer over, you know, kind of bring it up to par with documents. But yeah, so like you said, convenience, we've just been using that one as well because it works well.
Yeah, and it's not this issue, right? Do we know the issue number? Like, so I can start the conversation. Just
Yeah.
have give context.
Hey, Susan, I've just added the link in the chat.
Oh
the
yeah,
issue that-
504.
Yep, 504.
Thank you.
Thanks, RJ.
What's the easiest way to search for the number? I'm just gonna edit the URL here.
That's what I do. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so the initial issue was the media types that had been pushed didn't line up with, you know, the changes we had. So our tests were failing, so we couldn't put in a PR because the test would never pass. So that was kind of what initially kicked off the hierarchy change of all these artifacts. And then we noticed something else that we need to change as well. So that's kind of why I brought it up versus just kind of keeping this ticket alive, or if it's just easier, however that happens. But for us, maybe put in a PR somewhere else, or just, you know, update an issue over on the Web and Networks board, whatever is the easiest, because I'm sure there'll be more changes as sort of scenarios come up where we need to test different things with, I think like Tati was saying, what if we want to test a really large nested sample set or something, you know, like double nested, might be kind of nice to have these available so we can all sort of be pointing to the same resource.
Yeah. I feel like we might need our own like Ratify test image repository. Like I will open up an issue so then we can all follow up on this discussion.
Great, thank you.
Akash, you have your hand up.
Yeah, slightly related question, but so I think Matt, you mentioned that you guys have like a bunch of these images that have the different artifacts associated. Do you by chance have like a script that you use to generate those automatically? So it does all the signing and creating all the license checker artifacts and the SBOMs and things like that?
I do. Right now, the only downside to it is it uses the cert gen. So the certs are it's only valid for like a day, but that could easily, I just linked it. Right now it's in my personal, but it should be public. So it could be updated to use a more longer length cert.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm right now in the process of, we're going to migrate all of our pipeline tests to use a local registry. So as part of that, we have to do the whole signing and creating all the artifacts. So if you don't mind, I might reuse some of your code.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can. This can just be transferred somewhere as well if we need to, like you did with the other repo.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Toddy, I saw you had you had an open mic before. Did you have something to add?
No, sorry. That may be a mistake.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, okay. So the next action item for this, it would be, I will open up an issue and then we'll follow up with Luis on how do we want to, where should we put our test images? Okay, any other topics, anyone? Okay, we'll wrap up 20 minutes early then. And I just want to make a note, there will be no meeting next week. So happy holidays, everyone. And we will, I think the next meeting would be on the 4th of January. Yeah, I'll put a note there. The next meeting would be January 4th. And yeah, take care, everyone. Wish you a great holiday.
Have a nice holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
You too, thanks.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.